Okay. Yep, that looks like the stream's up and going. Yep, says live. All right. So, hello to anyone out there in the future that happens to watch this. Yep, says live. All right. So, what I'm a bit ahead of where I left off. I think I even skipped a chapter. As far as recording, I don't know. I'm going to record all of this. Probably not, but since I already missed a chapter, but I wanted to record another one because of a change I had made to the app since the last video. And the change is this part right here. That I had added a quick read last time, but I had in that one used the built-in browser text to speech, and that's what I think maybe the whole video was recorded with. One of these characters, I think that one maybe talking, and it just got so annoying to me. I just didn't want to hear it anymore. As far as just like listening to the whole story that way. So that last chapter that I did without recording it, I sat here just in silence and read it myself, um, which is fine. But if you're not in the mood for doing that, um, the quick reading is nicer. It could be nicer, or maybe you're just tired and don't really feel like sitting there reading it, but you need to go through it anyway. Um, and so I've added this another text to speech AI service. I just went and looked for one that was supposedly meant to be real time or as close to real time as possible, and then got it added in here um, instead of just over here. As in fact, I could probably change that back. That's the slowest one, but the highest quality one. Though this real time one is pretty good too, it seems. I'll have to test it out more. I just did it here today, but this one right here. So before you only had the AI TTSs here, and it was only for generating, like after you've created the story, you can go through and break each story page down with this button right here, build speaking script, which will go through here and break it out into speaking parts based on the character. And then it'll play, each character will have their own voice, and the whole story will get rendered in a nice, high quality, though slow AI. Because when that process is happening, it's going through the whole book, and just while you sleep or whatever, you have a computer sitting there cranking for hours or days, just going through the whole book, creating the TTS for the whole thing. Whereas when you're creating the book and you just want to hear it read back to you by a voice that isn't as annoying as those built-in browser ones. And that's what this feature is for. Is using that real time, that new TTS service, AI service I added, and you can pick different voices here as well. I've tested it. I think those two and this one out, and they all work. Um, and so it's it's a and it's not going to have a different voice per character. It's just like a narrator reading through here for you, and it's less annoying to listen to than those built-in browser ones. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and start on this page on chapter 5. I believe we're on, yeah, and just go for a while here and record the session. Well, I guess for someone who just happened to pop in on this particular stream, um, what this is me going through and creating a 400-page novel using this AI assisted novel or story creating app that I've been working on for a couple of years now. Like if I come back to here to the home page, you'll see that in this app there's an interactive story um, version of this app, which is what I created first. It's sort of like going through a story where it creates the page, it generates the pages, and it generates animations for each page and TTS text to speech for each page and an image for each page that's relevant to that particular page of the story. Shows the right characters and the right scene and all that. Generates background music for each page, and it gives you choice. It generates choices for each page of the story. So you could say, I want to do choice three, which takes the story in one direction, versus choice one, which takes you in a different direction. Or there's always a choice at the below those choices where you just type in what you want to do next. So it's almost like being in a role playing game where the story is being created as you go and you're interacting with it and participating in it. And when you get done, you have the whole 300-page story done. There's some videos up on the StreamTeam YouTube channel that is for a story. The first story I did using this interactive story mode is called A Darkening Mind, and it's using older AI and stuff too. But I'll I will end up going back and creating another story with this and video recording it that uses all the newer AIs that are nicer and has extra features I've added in. So instead of one picture being created per page, you get a series of pictures all generated for each page, and it does like this animation thing to show them to you as you're going through the story. So it's like an animated interactive audiobook. And then this novel builder is a different concept. So you go through and build and it has more sophisticated writing rules built into it. Um, though I've been moving those back into the interactive story builder also, but um, I'm taking a second shot at making it smarter at writing novels. There's all these rules and patterns and stuff that if you look it up that novel writers can follow. And so I've got all of those looked up and built into the AI prompts for this. So it's more intelligent about how it helps you develop outline of the story and each page breakdown and then the actual text of each page to make the characters more believable, make the story less seem like it's created by AI. For sure, that was what a lot of the stuff's about. Is AI has a depending on which AI you're using, a kind of a personality or something, and make stories depending on the type of story you're trying to create. Like if I was trying to create a dark, serious adult Dungeons and Dragons or Dragonlance type novel, um, the AI would tend to uh, make things just too cheery, too concerned about the feelings of every character in the story and stuff, instead of just telling the story. And I got that changed quite a bit now, so that it's not doing that type of stuff anymore. These AI prompts force the AI to act like it is a more of a professional writer. All right, and so let's open this up. And but it's got these AIs all built in, not just the AI for talking, to a virtual writer or a virtual editor or anything like that, but also other AIs for creating images and creating text to speech and creating music and eventually videos. Because when you get done with the whole story, which is instead of it being interactive and you're built creating all these things, all these media bits as you're going through the story, it's not interactive. Instead, you're just going through here and creating the whole novel. You get the story all in place first, and then once you have the story in place, then I haven't actually added it in yet, but there will be a menu up here where it'll give you options to say, I want you to go through in different ways the whole story and generate the media for everything. So you create the story first. Once you like the story, the text of it, Then you go back through and say, okay, generate all of the animations, all of the text to speech, all of the images, all of the background music, all of the videos. And when that's all done, and that could sit there and crank for weeks to get that all done, possibly. And hopefully not that long, but possibly. But the point is, you're not sitting there watching it do it. You know, you just wait till it gets done, and then you can say, okay, present this story as like an audiobook, or present it as a story that's with text on screen, and you're reading the text to me with text to speech, and you're showing an image, or so it looks like a book, like the interactive storyteller does. Or you can say, I want it to be more like a animated presentation, where the images are floating around on the screen, and you don't even see the text. There's like the images of the story for each page of the story. You know, maybe it'll generate 5 or 10 images. So you see each character, you get different views of maybe if there's a battle going on from one of the monsters' view, so from one of the characters' views, or a top-down bird's eye view. And it can generate all kinds of images, and it could show this stuff to you as the story is being read to you for that particular page. With animations, like let's say there's a storm going on, then there might be lightning flashes on the background of the page. So, or you could present it as a comic book format, or different output formats, all from the same story, with all the media generated. But that part all comes later, even though I have most of that built in right now. What I'm doing is going through this first 420 page book, and making sure that I can get through all the text, um, all the chapters, and then once I'm satisfied with it, editing it. That's what I'm doing right now, is just editing the story page by page, listening to it, which is why I got this real time text to speech to make it easier for me just to when I don't feel like reading it, listen to it, and then go back through and edit the parts of it that I don't like. And there's different editing tools in here, freehand editing, where I just type stuff in. You can highlight pieces and ask for recommendations from the AI for changing it to something different. You can do a full-on generate editor review, which is what all this is. The editor already went through and marked in, like, I think it's orange or something like that, and then as it changes, if you accept the change, it turns green. So, and that's done by the AI as well. It presents all these choices, and then you can, like that, and then you can say, well, accept or reject this one, and then the story will change in that little highlighted area. Um, okay, so anyway, that's a quick overview of what is going on here. I make AI driven apps, and in this case, it's a novel creator that's AI assisted in various places. It assists you on each individual page. It assists you in creating the story outline and all the characters. It assists you in creating all the chapters and page by page breakdown. Full profiles on all the characters and personas for their speaking parts, so they each have a different sounding voice. Um, and of course, you could generate all the pages of the story, and then go through each page of the story and make it, edit it, make it exactly the way you want it to be. And then obviously generate all the media for it when you're done. All right, so anyway, let's get going with this page. Now there's a little bit of a delay as it's generating the first paragraph, because it is back here using an AI service to do that. This is that new art real-time TTS, which I think it's using basically the same library as the PTTS. I use Pocket TTS for one of the other TTSs, but this one I think is set up faster. I did a lookup for somebody making what they claim to be real time. It's not quite real time, but it is pretty fast, and it is pretty good quality. So anyway, so here we go. So like back here right now, it's building the first paragraph's audio.
Fenwick brushed more snow from the pillar with the side of his paw and frowned at the shallow grooves. There was writing here, he said. Weather took most of it. He glanced up as Lyra crouched beside him. Unless you know a trick for coaxing stone to remember. Duck. I know a way to ask, she said. Her tone was light, but Tovin heard the care under it. Lyra slipped off one glove and set her bare fingertips against the green stone below the empty alcove. From inside her cloak she drew a small bone flute, plain from use rather than ornament. The note she breathed into it was so thin Tovin felt it before he heard it, a tremor running through the pillar beneath his palm. Lyra shifted the pitch by fractions, head bent as she listened, as if the stone answered in strain and echo. Frost loosened from the carved face. In the worn channels, pale dust lifted and settled again, tracing strokes too deliberate to be natural weathering. Fenwick stiffened. He leaned close, charcoal forgotten in his paw, and read where the old cuts showed themselves. Let the grieving halt. No. Wait. He swallowed and tried again, slower. Let the grieving halt before the morning gate. Speak no vow beneath the sunless stone, the king beneath. His voice caught for a beat. The king beneath the sunless stone hears what sorrow offers. After that, the mountain seemed quieter, though the wind still moved over the ridge. Fenwick looked at Lyra, not triumphant now, but wary. That is not devotional language. No, Lyra said, pulling her hand back from the pillar. Her fingers had gone white with cold. It sounds like an instruction carved after people learned the cost of doing it wrong. Tovin had heard enough campfire nonsense in border forts to distrust any phrase meant to frighten children, yet these words sat badly with him. Morning gate, king beneath the sunless stone. Not a god above, but something underfoot, listening for grief the way a hunter listened for steps in snow. He looked south along the road again. For the first time since taking this commission, the search felt less like a journey toward ruins than an approach to a place that had once answered when called.
Okay. I don't see anything I want to change there. Next page. It's going to take a little bit more time to get started because this is a pretty big paragraph at the beginning, and it does each paragraph one at a time.
Fenwick found his voice first. A funerary prohibition at a roadside shrine, he said, already building the argument aloud. He tapped the revealed line with the charcoal, not touching stone to stone. Not merely religious language, administrative language disguised as piety. Let no sing awake implies a known practice, a repeated danger, a codified ban. And this king beneath the sunless stone, if it is a title rather than a deity, we may be looking at one of the suppressed southern cults after all. Not merely a border outpost, but part of a network. Warnings. Roads. Sanctioned silence. His breath smoked around the words. His fear had not gone. He had only forced it into thought. Lyra, if this inscription matches the fragments from Red Hollow, then the erasure ran broader than we guessed. It reached into the passes. And, it reached here, Lyra said. She was no longer looking at the script. Her gaze had shifted to the pillar's right side, where the drift lay thinner against exposed rock. She stepped around the shrine and crouched, fingers hovering over a patch of exposed stone at knee height. And someone else cared enough to look recently. Tovin came at once. 3 pale cuts scored the rock beside the pillar, narrow and clean, with none of the weather-softened edges of the old carving. Below them, half hidden by blown snow, another mark crossed at an angle as if a blade had slipped in haste. Fenwick stared. Fact cut across theory at once. He knelt beside Lyra and touched one groove with the back of a claw, fresh enough that grit still clung sharp in the groove. Not made by frost, nor by a mule's shoe. Knife work. Search marks, Lyra said, or a signal. Her voice had gone quiet in the way Tovin disliked most. It meant she had felt something before she could name it. Tovin straightened and looked up and down the road, seeing now not an empty pass, but a place where another set of eyes might already have measured them. Fenwick folded his notes and put them away without protest. That, more than the cuts themselves, told Tovin the danger here was present, not buried. "We move carefully," he said. No one argued. The shrine stood cold at their backs, and the fresh knife marks made its warning feel current.
Okay, so there was something up here I wanted to change. You can see this warning is basically telling me if I do manual editing, all of these AI editor highlighted sections will go away, which doesn't matter. They've already been accepted, and I could always ask for another editor run if I wanted to. So up here, he tapped the revealed line with the charcoal, not touching stone to stone. I don't know what the hell that even means. I mean, if it considers charcoal stone, then and he tapped it, then he did touch stone to stone. What other stone is it talking about? I don't know. So sometimes I get it wrong, and I find out like the next page that something I changed was wrong, and I because it was leading into something. But for now, I don't think that. So I think it just threw a little extra flourish in there that was unnecessary and then didn't make any sense. So I'll go and get rid of that. We'll go to the next page. And as you can see, what this is, this process is, let's say you wanted to make a story, and you if you happen to have had access to this app, then what you would do is you would write down a premise of the story. That's what I did up here. So you talk about what the story is all supposed to be about, and you can also have AI assist you with that as well. Right here, expand premise. So you could write a shorter premise, then expand the premise, and you can look at it and go, "Oh, I like this, don't like that," make some changes to it, expand the premise again, or whatever. But at some point, you say generate outline, and it takes your premise and generates a complete outline of the whole story, like what the chapters are, and all that sort of thing. And then you go to that breakdown of the chapters, and well, you can have it generate a breakdown into chapters. The outline is this here. It's like who the characters are and what the chapters are about. And then the breakdown breaks down each chapter into individual pages, like that. So each page, it calls these right here like beats. So it's basically just a summary of what that page is about. So now you have every chapter and every page in every chapter with a summary of what it's about. And you can assign personas to the characters, which get broken down here as well. So you have like background story and important details of each character, and then that assigned persona, reads this and decides, well, let's make the person sound like this when you do the text to speech for that character. It's like voice actor role. And then once you've got the outline, the breakdown, the list of characters and their backgrounds, and you can say, well, let's start generating the story. And you could say generate the whole story, 1 to 420, all the pages right now. And it'll sit there and go to the AI, chat AI, over and over and over and over until it gets it all done. I was just doing a couple pages at a time, and then I started doing a whole chapter, like this last one was the whole chapter. That's what we're going through right now. And So it's AI assisted, and in this part that it's assisting with is essentially the editing part. This chapter has been written. We're just going through and listening to it and deciding what parts we like to keep and which parts we want to change. All right, so let's get started on the next page.
They found the tracks where the road bent down into a narrow gully and the wind had less room to scour the snow clean. Not hoofprints, boots, one man moving fast enough to slide at the heel. Tovin crouched and studied the line of them. The stride was uneven. Twice the right foot had dug deeper, as if the traveler had stumbled or favored one side. Beside the prints ran a second trail, lighter and broken. Something long dragged for a while, then lifted. Not old, Tovin said. The edges had crusted, but not yet rounded away. Lyra glanced back toward the shrine. Fenwick, a step behind, went still under his hood. The tracks led off the road to a frozen stream choked with white reeds and black stones glazed in ice. A man lay half on the bank, half against the stream bed, one arm twisted under him. His winter cloak was gone. So were his gloves, his belt knife, and the satchel whose strap still crossed his chest, cut clean through. What remained was enough to name him for a courier: hard boots, quilted riding coat, the waxed leather tube for messages hanging empty at his side. Carrion birds had pecked at his face where the scarf had slipped, but not enough to erase the strain in it. He had died dragging himself uphill. Fenwick swallowed and forced himself closer. Robbed after death, he said, but he did not sound as if he believed it. A dark stain had frozen through the man's coat below the ribs. Knife work, likely, quick and close. Lyra knelt near the boots, frowning. If they stripped him, they were searching. She touched the top of one boot, then pressed along the stiff leather. Something inside gave a little under her fingers. She looked up at Tovin once for permission, then drew a narrow eating knife from her sleeve. She cut the inner seam and reached into the lining. When her hand came out, it held a small oilskin packet no bigger than Fenwick's palm, bound with waxed thread and sealed against wet. No mark showed on the outside. Fenwick stared at it with undisguised hunger, scholar and scavenger at once, and then seemed to hate himself for it. Tovin took the packet before either cousin could speak and weighed it in his broad hand. Papers, perhaps. The dead man lay at his feet, one bare wrist exposed where someone had taken even his bracelet. Tovin looked from the body to the packet. The road ahead had narrowed in a new way. Whatever had drawn blood on this pass was no longer rumor. Now part of it sat in his hand. Fenwick's eyes stayed on the oilskin packet. If whoever killed him is ahead of us, every moment matters, he said. He did not reach for it, but the effort showed in the set of his shoulders and the quick, dry way he spoke. If there is a warning inside, or a route, or names, Tovin, we can bury him after. If someone is hunting couriers on this road, delay may cost the living more than it honors the dead. Tovin looked down at the courier's stripped body, at the cut strap across his chest and the bare hands stiff with cold. He knew enough while living, he said. Enough to hide this where thieves would miss it. Enough to drag himself uphill with a hole in him. He tucked the packet inside his own coat. He carried something worth dying for. The least we can do is not tear into it over his body like crows. Fenwick opened his mouth, shut it, then tried again with less heat and more desperation. Respect does not keep us alive. No, Tovin said. But once we start treating the dead like spoil, we do not stop there. Lyra rose from the body and wiped her knife clean on the snow before sheathing it. He's right, she said. Fenwick turned to her as if betrayed. She met it without flinching. Not because rights mend anything. Because taking knowledge this way, in haste and greed, spoils the hand that takes it. You know that. Her voice softened only a little. We came south to uncover the buried, not to become grave robbers with better vocabulary. Fenwick's ears flattened. The rebuke struck home because Fenwick had no answer to it. He looked at the packet once more, and this time what showed in his face was not hunger but shame sharpened by fear. The ground was iron under the snow, and burial in the mountain country meant labor, not ceremony. Tovin chose a place above the frozen stream where the bank held more stone than drift and set to work with the butt of his spear and his gloved hands, breaking crust, levering loose rock, making a narrow bed in the earth where frost had not bitten deepest. Fenwick joined him after a long moment. Silent now, using a small hand trowel from his satchel where Tovin's strength would have shattered what needed prying. Lyra gathered flat stones for a cairn, then searched the dead man's coat for any token that might name him before they covered his face. The wind moved through the reeds with a thin, rising sound. All three looked once toward the pass, then bent back to the work.
Okay, I see one small thing I wanted to change here or get rid of. Okay, using a small hand trowel from his satchel. Now, this where Tovin's strength would have shattered what needed prying. Yeah, okay, so, you know, it's in his little satchel, and Tovin is big and strong and blah, 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 but that doesn't need saying here. It's trying to reinforce the idea. See, this Tovin is like a big half giant or whatever type creature, and it's somewhere between a human and a giant, and they ride on his back on this like kind of like a double backpack type setup that they have, and these two smaller characters, and so the AI writer is trying to reinforce once again that he's really big and strong compared to them, because that's part of the deal between them is these two scholarly smaller creatures like saved his life or whatever, and so he is kind of duty bound with them, and he travels with them now, and he's way bigger than them, and so he wears like this backpack. Uh, I can't think of the word right now for whatever reason, but it's like this frame, a wooden frame, where they both can sit up back there, and he does most of the walking as they travel around. Okay. But the AI writer can, as far as I'm concerned, go a little too far here and there. And that's why you go through the whole story like this as a human and edit it. Even though there's already been an editing session done, that's what all these green patches are, is the AI editor. I have a setting set back in the settings or configurations where I tell it to automatically apply the AI editor after each page gets generated by the AI writer.
They finished the cairn with more care than the mountain would ever notice. Lyra set the last flat stone over the courier's chest, and Tovin stood a moment with his head bowed, not in any right Fenwick knew, but in the plain acknowledgement that a man had died on the road and would not be left to birds. Only then did Tovin draw the oilskin packet from inside his coat. The waxed thread had stiffened in the cold. He broke the seal with his thumb and unfolded the contents carefully, keeping them out of the snow. Inside were 2 sheets, both damp at the edges but legible. The first was a rough map of the pass, copied in haste from an earlier, steadier hand. It showed the road they had followed, the gully of Fork Tovin did not remember passing, and farther ahead a square mark tucked beneath the lee of a cliff. Beside it, in faded ink, someone had written Ways Station, abandoned. Near the mark sat the same emblem cut into the green shrine, a lowered circle ringed by long rays. Fenwick crouched so close his whiskers nearly brushed the page. Not a pilgrim's note, he said. A route record, practical, recent enough to matter. His voice sharpened as he traced the fork in the air. If this is accurate, the old shelter still stands, or someone believed it might. The second sheet held only 3 lines in a cramped hand, as if written with numb fingers. The first line had been smeared beyond saving. The second read, "Deliver no song beyond the marked house." The third was clearer, pressed hard enough to score the paper. "The road closes when the white voice rises." Lyra took the page from Tovin and read it twice. "White voice," she said. "Wind, I'd think, if not for the shrine." Fenwick's ears twitched. "Or something named for wind because it sounds like grief. The wording matches the warning too closely to ignore." Tovin folded both sheets and looked up the pass. The sky had not changed much, but the light had gone flat, and the air on his face felt thinner, meaner. A map, a dead courier, a warning against song. He had wanted the South to be dangerous in ways a strong back and a steady hand could meet. Instead, it kept offering signs that the danger here obeyed rules no honest man had made. "We keep this dry," he said, tucking the papers away again. "And we remember every word." Neither cousin argued. For once, what they had learned had cost someone blood. The wind changed while they stood over the cairn. Until then it had come in fitful draughts down the gully, cold but ordinary. Now it settled into a steady pull that found every seam in coat and glove, and set the reeds hissing without pause. Tovin lifted his head and listened, farther up the pass. Beyond the next rise, something answered the wind with a long, thin note that might have been air through stone, or not. He had heard enough of this road already to distrust any sound that invited explanation. He looked at the sky, at the flat light whitening over the ridge, and made the choice before either cousin could start in again. "We go to the Ways Station," he said. "Not one step farther today unless the mountain leaves us no choice." Fenwick's mouth tightened. Tovin could almost see the map and the warning contending behind his eyes. "If the marked house is the danger," Fenwick said, walking toward it may be exactly what the courier meant to prevent. He spoke carefully, as if precision might win him more ground than force. "And if there is a fork we missed, every hour spent seeking shelter is an hour in which whoever killed him may move farther ahead with whatever they took." Lyra said nothing. She watched the pass with her flute tucked inside her coat. Her usual quickness stilled in a way Tovin had learned to respect. "Yes," Tovin said. "And if this weather closes, we die with better questions than answers." He kept his voice level. "A dead scholar proves nothing. A frozen singer helps no one. We have a map, a warning, and enough daylight to reach stone walls if the map is honest. That is more than we had this morning." Fenwick flinched at scholar, not from insult but because it was true. Tovin pressed on before hesitation could soften him. "You can hate the delay. I would in your place. But you do not get to spend Lyra's life because you are afraid to lose the trail." For a moment, Fenwick looked ready to answer in anger. Instead, he let out a breath that smoked between them and bent to tighten the strap on his satchel. "One more day," he said, not quite to Tovin. Survival outranks discovery for one more day. It was a concession made under protest, which made it honest enough to trust. Lyra gave Fenwick a brief look, half sympathy and half warning, then turned to Tovin. Lead on, stone back. Tovin took point without another word. Behind him lay the Couria's cairn and the green shrine. Ahead, a square of ink on a damp map, and whatever waited inside it. The road had narrowed to duty, and for now duty was simpler than hope.
All right, a few changes here. That entire last sentence, don't see any point in having that. And okay, her usual quickness stilled. Yeah, a little bit too much attempt to add flourish there. I want to save that. This paragraph I kind of didn't hear because I was busy thinking about that.
Yes, Tovin said, and if this weather closes, we die with better questions than answers. He kept his voice level. A dead scholar proves nothing. A frozen singer helps no one. We have a map, a warning, and enough daylight to reach stone walls if the map is honest. That is more than we had this morning. Fenwick flinched at Scholar, not from insult, but because it was true. Tovin pressed on before hesitation could soften him. You can hate the delay. I would in your place. But you do not get to spend Lyra's life because you are afraid to lose the trail.
Okay. This character is a bit that Tovin is not just like a dumb mule that they hauls them around. You know, he's a bit more um, fatherly around them as well. So I guess that fits. It's a bit harsh, but playing his I don't remember now. Was his sister? Her entire life off on him, but whatever. It's not that big of a deal. I don't think. We'll see how the story goes through.
They climbed in a silence made practical by cold and caution. Snow squeaked underfoot. Leather creaked. Now and then, Fenwick muttered to himself when the map in his head disagreed with the slope under his boots. Lyra rode for a time on Tovin's pack frame, sparing her shorter legs the worst of the drifts. She leaned forward until her chin nearly touched his fur collar. You are doing that thing again, she said. Tovin kept his eyes on the road, walking. The other thing, turning into a wall whenever Fenwick is cross. She tapped one broad shoulder. Tell me the story of the temple at Glassmere, the true one, not Fenwick's version where he was a model of restraint, and I was led astray by architecture. Fenwick made an offended sound from behind them. I have never claimed restraint at Glassmere. Only superior judgment after the fact. A Tovin's mouth twitched. The memory came easily. A drowned ruin half sunk in a reed lake, a local magistrate offering silver for a sealed bronze coffer in its crypt, and the two cousins already inside when he arrived with 3 hired diggers and a rope team. Your cousin was hanging upside down from a broken idol, he said. You were on the floor arguing that the painted stars on the ceiling were a map. They were a map, Lyra said at once. They were also above a cracked cistern, Tovin said. One of the diggers found the coffer. The floor gave way before he could lift it, and water came up black and fast. The magistrate's man shouted for the box. Fenwick shouted about bones in the water and old ward stakes in the walls. You said the singing had started. He glanced back at her. I did not hear singing. I heard enough. He had gone down instead of after the coffer, one hand on the rope, the other smashing through rotten lattice to reach them. The coffer had flashed green under the water, close enough to take. So had the silver in his mind. Enough for a season's travel, enough to stop hiring out his strength to men who wanted doors broken and questions buried. Instead, he had cut Fenwick free, hauled Lyra out by the belt when the idol snapped, and left the coffer where it lay while the magistrate's man cursed him as a faithless brute. That was our meeting, Tovin said. You two nearly drowned over a theory. I lost a reward. And by evening Fenwick was explaining in detail why leaving the coffer sealed had likely saved the village. Fenwick drew level with them, ears low against the wind. It had grave salt packed around it and a lock plate etched with funerary numerals. Any fool could see it was not treasure. He paused. Though I admit the fool in question was paying well, Tovin grunted. Lyra smiled into her scarf, but her eyes stayed on his face a moment too long for the joke. She had heard what mattered. He had left the silver in the dark with the coffer and taken the loss instead. The road south had not given him purpose, but it had given him 2 people who remembered the choice.
Let's see. Okay, I hadn't quite caught a part of the story up above. Okay, so that all sounded okay. Well, so yeah, it's going to take this is a big paragraph at the beginning, so it's going to take a little bit more time for the TTS, the quick read TTS, to get this paragraph going. And yes, this is the same story as the previous videos. It's just that in this chapter it's switched to some different characters, a completely different set of characters in the same story.
The road bent along a shelf of stone where the snow had blown thin, and Tovin let the cousins walk beside him for a while instead of behind. The pass opened westward there, enough to show a long reach of white ridges and dark firs sunk in the folds below. The pass opened westward there, enough to show a long reach of white ridges and dark firs sunk in the folds below. In a place that bare, silence felt harder to keep. Lyra hopped down from his pack frame.
Okay, so it duplicate every once in a while. It does this. It's like the fourth or fifth time I've seen it. I probably need to try putting a rule in to get it to stop doing that. But here, let me edit this one for now. Let's see if that helps at all. Let's let's just start over the whole page. Quick.
The road bent along a shelf of stone where the snow had blown thin, and Tovin let the cousins walk beside him for a while instead of behind. The pass opened westward there, enough to show a long reach of white ridges and dark firs sunk in the folds below. In a place that bare, silence felt harder to keep. Lyra hopped down from his pack frame and walked backward a few steps, studying him with that bright, troublesome attention she usually reserved for old songs and suspicious strangers. "You never told us why you stayed after Glassmere," she said. Most hired blades would have taken the magistrate's anger, pocketed what they could, and gone where no one knew their name. Fenwick glanced over, interested despite himself. "I assumed it was because we are excellent company." "You assumed wrong," Tovin said, though not harshly. He adjusted the spear on his shoulder before answering. "Before that, I had spent 3 years carrying loads, breaking doors, and standing in front of men who called themselves patrons because they paid on time. Every town had a ruin, a feud, or a caravan master who wanted a large body between him and consequence." He kept his eyes on the road as he spoke. "I told myself work was work, honest enough, if I did not ask what came after the door broke or the relic changed hands." His jaw set. "At Glassmere I watched a man shout for a box while 2 living people drowned in front of him. I understood then what my strength was worth to men like that. A tool, so they would not have to dirty their own hands." Fenwick's ears lowered. "And we were better?" "No," Tovin said. "You were worse in some ways. You would risk your necks for an inscription no one else could read." Lyra grinned at that, but he did not. "But when the floor gave way, neither of you asked for the coffer." Fenwick wanted the bones left undisturbed. You wanted to know who had sealed the place and why. That was the first time I had seen people go after the past without trying to strip it for parts. He glanced down at them. "I thought perhaps if I walked with you long enough, I might find work that did not leave a bad taste in me." Lyra's expression softened, though her voice stayed light. "And have we improved your life, Stoneback?" "No," Fenwick said before Tovin could answer. "We have nearly gotten him killed in marshes, cellars, and one regrettable bell tower." Tovin snorted. "True. But I know what I am carrying now." The words came out plainer than he intended, and none of them laughed. "Not treasure. Not another man's greed. A scholar who could dress obsession up as virtue. A singer who heard danger before it showed its teeth. And a road leading towards something none of them understood." Fenwick looked away first. Lyra did not. She gave Tovin a small nod, taking the words for what they were. Above them the wind scraped over the stone with a thin, steady cry, and the pass ahead narrowed into it. Tovin saw the birds before the cousins did. 3 dark shapes rode the air above the western drop. Too heavy for crows, and ravens did not circle with that kind of patience. They kept pace without flapping much, using the wind off the cliffs, their bald heads turning as if they were already judging where a body would split easiest. "Stay close," he said quietly. Lyra looked up at once. Fenwick followed her gaze a breath later and swore under it. The scavengers dipped lower, broad-winged and ugly, mountain carrion eaters grown bold by winter hunger. One gave a raw, coughing cry that scraped along the stone. Tovin slid his spear from his shoulder. "They think we retired," he said. "Let them be wrong." The first bird came in from behind, drawn to the bright charms stitched to Lyra's pack. Tovin turned and met it with a 2-handed thrust. The iron tip missed the breastbone by a handspan, but the bird veered hard, wings beating snow into his face. Another dropped toward Fenwick, claws spread. Fenwick stumbled back, paw diving for his herb pouch instead of the knife at his belt. Now would be an excellent time. Lyra snapped. Tovin planted himself between them and the bird, bellowing from deep in his chest. The sound struck the pass wall and came back larger. For an instant, the wind itself seemed to hesitate. Fenwick flung a pinch of crushed root and resin into the air and spoke a word too soft for Tovin to catch. The smell changed at once. Cold stone and old snow vanished beneath a rank, musky reek, cat-sharp, territorial. The scent of some great mountain hunter close enough to kill. The birds felt it. Tovin saw the change in them. Heads jerking, wings hitching, their boldness gone thin. He lunged at the nearest one with a roar and a sweep of the spear shaft. Lyra, quick as spite, snatched a strip of red cloth from her sleeve and snapped it high above her head. That did it. The scavengers climbed in a ragged burst, circling once at a safer height before the wind carried them off along the ridge. No one spoke for a moment. Tovin kept the spear up until the last dark shape was only a fleck against the white. Fenwick bent over with his paws on his knees, breathing hard, his whiskers wet with blown snow. "I dislike," he said at last, "being reminded where we stand in the food chain." Lyra shoved his shoulder, not gently. "Next time," she said, "start with the larger predator." Tovin looked from one to the other, making sure both were whole. The birds were gone, but Tovin kept the lesson. On this road, anything hungry would test them for weakness. They walked on until the birds vanished behind the ridge and the road felt like a road again instead of a ledge where hunger had weighed them. Tovin set his spear back on his shoulder. Fenwick had recovered his breath, but not his dignity. He kept brushing at his robe, as if the birds had left some stain on him the snow concealed. There is a lesson in that, he said at last, more to the past than to either of them. Not the obvious one. Lyra made a small sound. A pity. I was fond of the obvious one. Fenwick ignored her. Those creatures survive by stripping the dead. Yet the route I used, the word tied to it, the scent that drove them off, all of it passed from herders to field notes, from field notes to a monastery library, from one hand to the next. A chain of minds preserving something useful for whoever came after. He glanced at Tovin. I know I can be tiresome about ruins, but part of why I study them is stubbornness. I want proof that wisdom can outlast violence, that what people learn is not always buried with them. Tovin listened without interrupting. The wind had eased enough for speech, and Fenwick's voice carried clearly in the cold. It was an honest admission, which made it heavier than one of his lectures. Tovin had heard Fenwick talk of history, ethics, memory, all the fine reasons a man gave when he wanted to make his hunger sound clean. This was closer to the bone. Maybe it can, Tovin said. You've shown me things in old places that kept folk alive long after the builders were dust. He looked ahead at the white road, at stone, distance, and the storm thickening. But every ruin I've seen belonged to people who thought wisdom would save them. They learned too late that knowing a thing and stopping a sword are not the same work. Fenwick's ears lowered, not in offence, but in thought. That is not an argument against wisdom. No, Tovin said. It is an argument against worshipping it. He shifted the pack on his back. A clever city still burns when proud men mistake understanding danger for mastering it. A temple falls, a library rots. Then someone like you comes later and gathers what the fire spared. His tone stayed even. But Lyra heard the edge in it and looked from one to the other. Tovin went on. I am glad for that work. I mean it. But the dead do not become wise because they left notes. Bit. For a few steps no one answered. Then Lyra tucked her hands deeper into her sleeves and said, So that is our cheerful road philosophy for the day. Fenwick says memory may outlive murder. Tovin says murder usually gets first claim. She gave them both a sidelong look. In fairness, you are each making the other's point. Fenwick huffed, but some of the stiffness had gone out of him. Tovin did not smile, though he knew she was right. He had chosen these two in part because they believed old knowledge mattered. He was beginning to understand that if they reached the south, his task might not end with keeping them alive long enough to learn something. He might have to decide when learning itself had become one more way to die.
I don't know. I don't really like that entire page. So 121. Right there. Regenerate 121. You can see right there it says it's regenerating 121. Basically, it's just the AI being told, here is the story so far, here is what's coming up in the story, and here's the summary for this page, and then generate the page. There we go, it's done. So it's actually it gave back something that wasn't quite correct format. That's why we got this little weirdness here at the beginning. So I'm going to go back and tell it to regenerate it again. I'll have to change it so I could search by page and number also, not just by the text of the summary. Okay, let's listen to this one. This version of this page, now that we've replaced the previous version.
They walked on until the birds peeled away and the road gave them no reason to speak. Tovin carried his spear low now, the shaft dark with melt where his glove had gripped it. Fenwick had recovered enough to look embarrassed by his own breathing, which usually meant his mind was already trying to master what fear had broken apart. At last he said, without looking at either of them, when I was young, I thought ruins proved people had failed to keep what mattered. I do not think that now. He adjusted the strap of his satchel, ears flattened against the cold. Or not only that, a wall falls, a kingdom burns. Yet a warning survives in a margin, a burial custom in a pattern of shards, a prayer in the way stones are laid. Someone reaches across centuries and says, we were here. We knew something. We tried. Lyra glanced at him, surprised by how plainly he said it. Fenwick went on before she could tease him. Part of why I study these places, part, not all, is stubbornness. If men with swords can erase a city in a season, I would like to prove they do not win entirely, that wisdom can outlast violence if someone bothers to read it. He gave a short, humorless laugh. A scholar's revenge, perhaps. Tovin listened a few steps longer before answering. Every ruin I have seen, he said, was built by someone who believed that too late. The words landed hard because he did not raise his voice. A lord builds a stronghold and thinks stone will teach his sons caution. A priest carves laws into a temple wall and thinks that makes them endure. A city buries its dead behind warnings and locks and trusts the next age to be wiser. He looked ahead into the whitening pass. Then hunger comes, or war, or greed dressed up as duty, and the people who should have listened are already ash. They take the tea. Fenwick opened his mouth, then shut it. Tovin was not mocking him. That made it worse. Lyra tucked her hands deeper into her sleeves and said, both can be true. Neither man answered at once. The road climbed, narrow and pale between dark stone shoulders, and the wind found them again with a thinner voice than before. Fenwick finally nodded. But the gesture was uneasy, as if he had been forced to admit that old wisdom meant little to the dead.
Okay, did not need that little bit, I don't think. There was something else up here. Okay.
By midday, the snow had thickened from a nuisance into a hazard. It came slantwise across the pass in fine, dry sheets that blurred distance and flattened the world to stone, white, and the dark shapes of the three of them moving through it. The road narrowed until Tovin could have touched the cliff with his spear, while the drop waited a boot's length away. He did neither. He walked with one hand free, eyes moving from the ledge ahead to the drop beside them, judging where the mountain might give way beneath them. "Single file here," he said. "Step where I step." No one argued. Even Fenwick had learned that some debates belonged to warmer ground. The first boundary stone appeared half buried in drift, leaning from the snow like a broken tooth. Tovin stopped long enough to brush it clear with his glove. Under the rime lay a carved crown split down the middle by an old hammer blow. A few paces farther on, across the road, stood its answer. A taller stone snapped at the waist, its face marked with the wolf sigil of the Western Marches. Someone had hacked at that one too, not to erase the emblem but to deface it again and again, as if the quarrel had survived the men who fought it. Fenwick crouched, despite the cold, whiskers silvered with frost. "Two border claims on the same road," he said, "neither willing to yield the pass, both too weak to keep it." "Or too proud," Lyra said. She did not kneel. Her gaze stayed on the heights above them, where the snow gathered in shelves under black rock. The broken stones had changed her expression. Whatever curiosity she had shown earlier was gone. Calculation had taken its place. Tovin knew that look. It meant she had sensed the same change in the pass he had. He straightened and scanned the ledges again. A pass fought over for generations was more than a line on a map. Men had learned to ambush, starve, and freeze one another here with official blessing. Fenwick rose slowly, rubbing feeling back into his paws. "Contested roads preserve strange things," he said. "Old toll records, military markers, hidden caches." "And bones," Tovin said. He set them moving before Fenwick could stop to speculate further. As they filed between the ruined stones, the pass seemed to tighten around them, as if dead kingdoms still contested every step. Whatever waited ahead. The pass had taught the same lesson for generations. No one came through without paying. The wind changed without warning. One moment it was only weather, hard and thin along the stone. The next it caught in the pass and carried a second sound beneath it, a wavering thread that did not belong to air moving over rock. Lyra stopped so abruptly that Fenwick nearly walked into her. Beneath her hood, her ears flattened. "Do you hear that?" she asked. Tovin listened. At first he heard nothing but the gale scraping the cliff. Then, faintly, something rose and fell within it, too patterned for chance and too broken for speech. It set the skin between his shoulders on edge. Fenwick's eyes brightened at once, which Tovin had learned was its own kind of danger. The musty was already digging in his satchel for charcoal and waxed paper. "The pitch shifts with the gusts," he said, half to himself. "Not random. There's repetition. A resonance, perhaps, from hollows in the rock or carved chambers beneath the pass. Or a bad place teaching the wind a trick," Lyra said. She did not look at him. She stood with her head tilted, listening as if someone far off were speaking through stone. Tovin saw the moment her unease hardened into decision. She drew a small bone flute from an inner pocket, tested one note, then lowered it again. "No, voice first." She sang softly, not to drown the sound but to meet it. A plain, travelling air, steady and narrow, the kind sung to keep a walking pace in dark country. The tune gave them something human to hold to. Tovin felt its effect at once. The strange undervoice in the past did not vanish, but it lost some of its pull, as if her song had drawn a line it could not cross so easily. Fenwick, to his credit or discredit, looked more thrilled than reassured. He scribbled while she sang, noting intervals, wind direction, and the shape of the cliff. "If this road was engineered," he murmured. "If there are buried galleries or old signal works." Tovin caught his shoulder before he could drift toward the edge in pursuit of a theory. Fenwick glanced up, chastened only enough to stop moving. Lyra finished the verse and let the last note die into the white air. For a breath, the past seemed to listen back. Then the ordinary gale returned. All three of them stood very still, as if each had heard something different, and none of them liked what that meant.
Okay, so that last sentence to me doesn't make any sense. Let's see here. Okay, yeah, I don't. Okay.
The man burst from the white above them so suddenly that Tovin had his spear in hand before he knew he'd reached for it. One heartbeat the slope was empty. The next a figure was scrambling down through the drift on all fours, sliding, catching himself, sliding again. He wore furs so patched they looked grown together rather than sewn, and his hood was crusted with old ice. A string of rabbit bones knocked against his chest. When he reached the road, he lurched upright and stared at them with eyes red-rimmed from wind or fear. He smelled of smoke, wet hide, and the sourness of a man gone too long without sleep. "Turn back," he said, his voice cracking, "or get under stone before dark." Don't stand in her throat. He looked past them as he spoke, not at the drop or the heights, but into the blowing snow ahead, as if something in it might answer. Fenwick stepped forward, despite Tovin's arm barring him. "Whose throat?" he asked. "Is there a shelter ahead? How many travelers?" The trapper's gaze snapped to him, sharp for an instant. "Too many," he said. "Road narrows by the old house. Sled, wagon, pack mules. Folk stacked up, waiting on weather or death." He gave a dry bark of laughter. "Storms you're choosing today." "What?" Lyra had gone very still. "Choosing?" she said. The man's eyes found her, and whatever he read there made him flinch. "You heard it," he muttered. Don't answer if it sings sweet. Don't follow lights off the road. Don't trust tracks that weren't there a blink before. His gloved hand worked at the rabbit bones until one snapped. The mountain's bad enough. But this storm... He swallowed and lowered his voice. This one listens. Gede. Tovin took one step toward him. Who is ahead? He asked. Names. For a moment he thought the man might answer. Instead, panic wiped the trapper's face blank. He jerked away from Tovin's reach, nearly falling, and began clawing downslope along the road they had climbed. Fenwick called after him. Lyra did not. The man never looked back. Soon there was only the wind again, and the thin rattle of the broken rabbit bone he had left in the snow between them.
Okay, make a few changes here in this one.
Fenwick took 2 quick steps after the fleeing trapper before Tovin caught the back of his robe and hauled him short. He knows something, Fenwick said, twisting around. Snow had gathered on his whiskers again, and his eyes had the dangerous shine Tovin knew too well, the look he got when his thoughts outran sense. If there's a way citation ahead, if there are other travelers, if this listening storm is only some local name for the pass carrying sound. It does not matter what name he gives it if we freeze chasing him, Tovin said. He released the robe but kept himself squarely in the road. We stay together. Fenwick opened his mouth at once. Lyra spoke first. He's right. Her voice was quiet, which meant she was more alarmed than if she had snapped. She crouched and picked up one of the rabbit bones the trapper had dropped, turning it in her fingers. That man was running from something. Fear makes poor witnesses. Fear also makes honest ones, Fenwick said. Frustration sharpened him. We keep stumbling over fragments, stones, songs in the wind, mad warnings. And every time the world offers an answer, we let it vanish into the snow. At some point, caution turns into choosing blindness. He looked at Tovin when he said it, and the accusation was plain enough. Tovin let it land. And at some point, he said, a clever man dies because he thinks one more answer is worth one more step on bad ground. He pointed with the spear toward the whitening road ahead. You want truth. Good. Want it tomorrow. Fenwick held his gaze, angry now, and aware enough to hate it. After a moment he bent, took the snapped rabbit bone from Lyra's palm, and tucked it into his satchel. No one spoke after that. They turned south again, closer together than before, while the wind shoved at their backs, driving them south whether they chose it or not.
There we go. Yeah, there was something I wanted to edit in there. Okay, next page.
Toward dusk the road bent around a shoulder of black rock, and the wind eased a little. Not warmth, only a brief lessening, enough for smells to carry. Tovin caught smoke first, old wood smoke, dampened by snow but not erased. He lifted a hand, and the cousins stopped behind him. On the lee side of the bend, half swallowed by drift, lay the remains of two campfires ringed with fist-sized stones. One had burned down to grey ash and charred pine knots. The other held a darker core beneath the powder, not long dead. Nearby, the snow had been trampled to a dirty crust by boots and hooves, and something broader had cut deep pared grooves into the road. Wagon ruts, recent enough that their edges had not yet softened away. Fenwick was already kneeling before Tovin could stop him. He touched the ash with two careful fingers, hissed at the hidden heat, and looked up, Scholar's excitement briefly overcoming his fatigue. Hours, not days, he said. And more than one party. See there, the hoof prints overlap. But these boot marks are different sizes. Some shod with nails, some plain leather. He followed the ruts with his eyes until the snow took them. If they halted here, the way station cannot be far. Or they halted because they had to, Lyra said. She had moved to the edge of the road where a scrap of cloth fluttered from a thorny dwarf pine, snagged and frozen stiff, red once, now dark with meltwater, not torn from a banner, too coarse. Wagon cover, perhaps, or a traveler's cloak. She left it where it hung. Her gaze had gone to the second fire ring, where someone had thrust a bone into the ash and left it there blackened at one end. No cooking pot, no shelter built. They stopped in haste. Tovin studied the ground until the signs resolved into choices. A small caravan, maybe two, driven together by weather. That could mean traders, pilgrims, mercenaries, thieves, or some mix of all four. It could mean help if the storm worsened. It could mean men who would hear Fenwick ask one wrong question and decide he was worth killing for the answer. He planted the butt of his spear beside the freshest rut and looked south into the whitening pass. Close then, he said. Close enough to smell. From here on, we assume strangers are armed, frightened, and no kinder than the mountain. Fenwick rose without argument this time. Lyra gave the dead fire one last look, as if it might still tell her what sort of people had warmed themselves there, then followed when Tovin set them moving again. They found a little shelter under an overhang where the cliff leaned out above the road and broke the worst of the falling snow. It was not enough to rest in, only enough to speak without the wind stealing every word. Fenwick had gone a short distance back along the ruts. Head bent over his satchel, comparing the courier map to the marks he had copied from the boundary stones. Tovin watched him until he was sure the musty stayed in sight through the snow. Only then did he lower his spear and roll his shoulders once, easing stiffness from them. Lyra stood beside the black rock, one gloved hand pressed to it as if listening for something through the stone. He thinks this is about ruins, she said. Her voice was pitched low, meant for Tovin alone. Lost halls, old vaults, some buried court with enough gold to keep scholars arguing for a century. She glanced toward Fenwick and despite herself almost smiled. It vanished quickly. But the map, the shrine marks, the way those border stones were broken, none of it feels like treasure hunters' work. It feels buried on purpose. Not against grave robbers, against memory. Tovin looked south, where the road faded into white. You think someone buried more than a city. But
I think she makes little weird noises like that at the end, the TTS. Probably because like the parentheses are being fed in.
I think someone buried a story, Lyra said. And stories are how kingdoms justify themselves. If the shrine and the packet point to the same place, then maybe what lies south is not merely old. Maybe it is inconvenient, something powerful enough that men fought over roads to it, then taught their children to forget why. Her fingers tightened against the stone. That frightens me more than any chest of coins. It should, Tovin said. He did not soften it. Gold kills men one at a time. Truth like that can empty a valley. Lyra met his eyes. If she wanted comfort, she did not find it. He gave her honesty instead. If you are right, then whoever buried it may still have heirs. Remember that before you start pulling threads. Behind them, Fenwick made a sharp sound over his papers, surprise or discovery. Tovin lifted his spear again. Too late for caution to be easy, he said, and turned toward him. Fenwick's sharp cry had not been surprise at all, but anger at himself. By the time Tovin and Lyra reached him, he had spread 3 damp scraps across a flat stone and pinned them with bits of gravel against the wind. The courier packet was blotched with water and grease, and an old burn had eaten half a line, yet Fenwick stared at it with the stubborn intensity of a man refusing to be beaten by damage. "I copied this wrong at the shrine," he said. "Not the word, the relation between the marks." He tapped a cramped cluster of marks with a charcoal-blackened claw. "I took this for a locative suffix, south of, or beneath, or belonging to a place. It is not. It's genealogical." Lyra crouched beside him, snow gathering on the shoulders of her layered coat. In plain speech, cousin. Fenwick drew a sharp breath through his nose, impatient with the need but honest enough to oblige. "The sigil we keep calling the Southern Mark may not mean a city at all. It may mean a house, a bloodline." He shifted to another scrap, one bearing the same hooked emblem they had found carved into the broken boundary stone. "See the repetition? Not on roads, not on measures of distance. On names, formal names, titles." His eyes lifted to hers, bright now with something harsher than scholarly triumph. "If I'm right. The packet was directing a courier to ruins. It was warning him about descendants or claimants. Heights." Tovin looked from the papers to the white road ahead. "Kings," he said. Fenwick gave a tight nod. "Something close to it. The old southern sign attached to rulership, inheritance, legitimacy." He seemed to hate the next conclusion even as he spoke it. "Which means the South did not vanish cleanly into legend. Some part of its authority survived in fragments, inside later crowns, treaties, perhaps even wars." Lyra's face changed at that, not fear exactly, but the hardening that came when suspicion found proof. So the songs about the 2 northern courts stealing rights from the dead weren't only songs. "Look." "No," Fenwick said. He gathered the scraps with more care than before, as if they had become dangerous by being understood. "And if northern kings have been borrowing southern claims, knowingly or not, then whatever destroyed that civilization did not stay buried. It survived by dressing itself as history." Tovin's grip tightened on his spear. The wind pressed at their meager shelter, colder now, carrying that thin, almost voice through the pass again. This time none of them mistook it for weather. The storm struck with no further warning. One moment the pass was a hard, visible thing. Road, cliff, drift, the dark shaft of Tovin's spear. And the next it was gone behind a wall of white so dense it seemed to erase distance itself. Wind hit them broadside and drove ice through fur and wool like needles. Fenwick cursed as loose papers thrashed inside his satchel. Lyra dropped low at once, one hand on Tovan's belt before the gust could peel her away. Tovan planted his boots and leaned into it until his thighs shook. "Rope," he said. He did not raise his voice. He made it flat and certain enough to cut through panic. They had used one on steeper climbs. Now his numb fingers dragged it free while the mountain tried to take it from him. He tied Fenwick first, then Lyra, then looped the last length around his own waist. It was clumsy work in gloves stiff with ice. By the time he finished, snow had crusted in his brows and lashes. "No wandering," he said. "If one falls, all stop." Fenwick nodded, ears flattened, and squinted south into the white as if stubborn thought alone might cut through it. "The road bends left after the split stone," he said, then rises. "The way station should sit under the lee of the ridge." "Should," Lyra muttered, but she closed her eyes instead of arguing. Tovin saw her listening, head tilted against the shriek of the gale, sorting wind from echo the way other people sorted voices in a crowded room. They moved because to stand still was to be buried. Tovin took the lead, finding the road less by sight than by the feel under his boots. Packed track beneath fresh powder, the dangerous softness at the edge where the mountain dropped away. Twice he checked them with an outflung arm before the ground vanished under drift. Behind him Fenwick kept naming landmarks they could not see, forcing memory against the storm, refusing to let the map be swallowed. Behind both of them Lyra called corrections when the wind changed pitch off stone. "Wall to the right," she shouted once. Later. "Open ground left." Her voice shook, but each warning came clear. Tovin had always trusted what was solid. Weight, footing, the reach of his own hands. In the whiteout those things shrank to almost nothing, and he found himself depending on a scholar's half-ruined notes and a singer's ear for shifts in the gale. It angered him that the mountain could make strength so small. It steadied him, too. A guardian who only trusted his own power was just another fool with broad shoulders. He lowered his head and hauled them onward through the screaming dark, one careful step at a time, while somewhere ahead the way station waited under stone, or the mountain had already buried it. The way station appeared only when they were nearly on top of it, a squat shape pressed into the mountainside, more shadow than building until the wind thinned for a breath and stone emerged from the white. One corner of the roof had sagged under old winters. The outer wall leaned, patched in places with darker timber that did not match the original work. Relief hit Tovin hard enough to weaken his knees. Shelter. 4 walls, maybe a hearth, maybe a door that still held. Then he saw the yard. Two wagons stood half buried against the lee wall, their canvas covers crusted with snow. One was broad and practical, built for freight or long roads. The other narrower, its fittings too well kept to belong to a common freight train, even under the ice. Horses hunched between shafts and hitching posts, heads low, manes rimed white. Figures moved near the entrance, blurred at first, then briefly distinct when the gale shifted. A tall man stood on the steps or just below them, his shoulders broad even under layered winter gear. Beside him stood a woman with dark hair plastered by snow, standing too still for panic. Another shape near the nearer wagon, slight and bent over some task Tovin could not make out. More than one party. Just as the tracks on the road had warned. Fenwick made a sound that might have been triumph, if fear had not cut through it. We were right. About shelter, Lyra said. Her hand tightened on Tovin's belt through the rope. She was staring at the figures, ears flat against her hood. Not about safety. Tovin slowed them before the open yard. The storm had driven them all to the same shelter. But that did not make them allies. Frightened travelers guarded food and fire more fiercely than coin, and secrets most fiercely of all. He studied the wagons, the tall man's stance, the distance to the door, and felt the old habit settle into place. Count hands, count exits, assume trouble. Stay behind me, he said. Relief was still there, but smaller now, cut down to caution. Ahead, the way station waited with strangers already inside its shadow.
It's the last page of the chapter, it appears.
Tovin unwound the rope from his waist and passed the slack back to Fenwick without taking his eyes off the yard. Hands where they can see them, he said. No sudden cleverness. Fenwick twitched at the word cleverness, but tucked his satchel under one arm and raised his free paw. Lyra did the same, though her gaze kept moving over the wagons, the horses, the dark mouth of the doorway. Tovin shifted his spear to his left hand and lowered the point toward the snow. It was not surrender, only the shape of it. Enough to keep frightened strangers from deciding too quickly. They crossed the yard in a slow line, boots and small feet crunching through the drift. The broad wagon's wheels were rimed white. The narrower one showed better ironwork under the ice, and a lantern hung dead at its side. Useful details, Tovin noted automatically. Wealth, or at least care, not merchants in a hurry. The tall man by the steps had the stance of someone who knew where his weight belonged. Soldier, likely, or something close. The dark-haired woman beside him watched without hunching against the cold. Tovin distrusted that more than any drawn knife. People who stayed that still in weather like this were either disciplined or dangerous. Often both. When they were near enough to be heard without shouting, Tovin stopped and opened his empty right hand. Snow clung to the fur at his wrist and to the tattoos on the backs of his fingers. Travelers, he called, storm-driven, not looking for trouble. He let the word stand. No pleading, no swagger. Behind him, Fenwick's breath came fast with cold and nerves. Lyra was quieter, which worried him more. He could feel her listening to the silence between the strangers as much as to the wind. No mountain oath had prepared Tovin for this sort of threshold, Where a door might mean warmth or murder, and courtesy had to serve as armor. He kept his shoulders loose, his spear low, and measured the distance to the entrance in case talk failed. Whatever waited inside that leaning stone shell, fire, lies, allies, witnesses, would matter. Instinct told him that much. We ask only shelter, he said, and led the cousins to the steps while the storm crowded close around them.
Okay. So some editing to do here. Yeah, thing that sounds dumb to me. Get rid of that. Yeah, get rid of that little quip. Okay, so that's the end of that chapter. So the first chapters was essentially introing the entire environment and the soldier that Kale is his name, that I think, if I remember right, that was part of the war at the beginning of the story. And you get a little hint of one of um, the the big bad guy of the story at the beginning too, and then that also leads to the intro of oh, the entire this man and this woman that are out traveling with these two wagons, and um, they have some magical powers, and uh, there's something kind of strange about them, especially the woman. Sometimes her appearance kind of shifts a little while she's in the middle of casting magic, and they have like lots of books and research type stuff with them, scholarly type stuff, very much like these characters in this chapter. These three. Well, the two smaller characters and their big friend. Is the big friend is not a scholar. That's as they were talking about, their how they had met. He obviously was just like kind of like a used as a big thug, um, though he was a little bit smarter than that, and decided to go with these two characters who are scholar adventurer types as well. And anyway, so that's the end of this chapter and this video for now. I just wanted to show off this new uh, higher this new real time text to speech to replace the built-in browser one. Makes it a little bit nicer to just listen to the story being read to you while you're editing it. And now I've got to go back here and tell it to generate the next chapter, which is pages 132 to 160. 132 to 160. And so it'll sit there and generate that next chapter for me, and then sometime later, probably sometime later today, may not video record it, may not stream it, but uh, I'll go through that chapter as well, and like that'll be chapter 6 out of 15. So what I'm doing is I'm going through this whole process through the entire thing, cleaning, editing things, cleaning up things, and then I'll have it generate all of the media, all the text to speech, all the images, all the background music, all animations, everything for the whole thing. And then the next part of this app for me to work on after that is the playback. Um, the the I don't know. I don't know if it's just playback, but how do I describe it? Yeah, I guess as it's like a playback engine, just with different options. So you can say, just output this as like a printed book, or output it as an audio book, or output it with everything, like all the text to speech, background music, images, but also like different formatting, like use all the media, but use it laid out like a book, or use all the media, but use it laid out like a comic book, um, or make it play like an audiobook, or make it play like I don't know, like there's different types of animated um, presentations you could do where like as the text is being read to you, if you have like 5 or 10 different images for each page that gets generated that shows that particular page of the story from different perspectives, you can add those different images shown in some kind of fancy presentation, like with fades in between each one. Maybe they're kind of floating around on the screen a little bit instead of just sitting within a frame, and it makes it sort of like a little animated presentation. But and eventually when we get AI videos going, then have all that baked in as well. I could do the As of right now, I have all the technology, all the AIs I need. If I wanted, I could have it go through the whole book and render a picture of each character. Darn it. Why am I yawning so much? Of each character reading their part. Because right now I can do text to speech to have each character speak their part, but I actually could use Lip Sync Flow app on StreamTeam.com. I could use that to make each character, you could make a video of them speaking their part on that page, dressed however they're dressed on that page, and looking the way they look on that page of the story and that sort of thing. I could do that right now. It would take a long time because each one of those clips would take like 20, 30 minutes to render, but and a clip would be like maybe them speaking a sentence or two, that sort of thing. So getting through a single page would probably take, um, you know, 3 or 4 hours of rendering, and then there's 400 and some pages. So, it would take a long time on my, just on home PC, the 4090 GPU to do all that. Um, but I want to keep adding those features in anyway, because at some point, the either I'll just take all these AIs and put them up on an online service with some serious GPUs, like 100,000 or $1 million GPU network connected to it that they rent out, and then I can just rent it, by the hour, however it is they do it, and have all the even those video AIs go a lot faster by doing that, to produce the final output, or just AI home consumer level AI hardware will finally get powerful enough that you could just I could replace these four GPUs that I have now, 4090s, with something way more powerful, so you can actually render videos like that at home. But in any case, this whole novel builder is at that point will be not just a novel builder, but also it produces the output. You know, because if you get some nice outputs, you can you can record them as videos and put them up on YouTube, either as full like chapters. Maybe the full, if you end up generating an entire movie, because that would be the final ultimate version of this, is if I get an AI generator that could produce an entire movie from this entire breakdown. Um, and in any case, or like as a bunch of shorts, every page could be turned into a short video and put out there. And so there's different, you could do all kinds of stuff with the output once you get the overall book done. All right. Well, anyway, that's it for now. I'm going to end the stream.